Drake has made $250 million. He doesn't write his own lyrics. And the music is the least profitable thing he does. In 2015, the internet decided that Aubrey Drake Graham was finished. A rapper named Meek Mill went on a late night Twitter rant and dropped a bomb. Drake uses ghostwriters. Within hours, reference tracks leaked. A guy named Quentin Miller singing Drake's hooks, word for word, before Drake had ever stepped into the booth. In hip-hop, that's a death sentence. It's the equivalent of a magician showing you the trap door, or a politician accidentally telling the truth. The purists wrote his obituary. The haters threw a parade. But then something happened that nobody could explain. Drake didn't go broke. He didn't lose his fans. He didn't disappear. In fact, every single time the internet destroyed Drake, his net worth went up. Today, this man lives in a $100 million mansion in Toronto. Indoor basketball court. Marble everything. He sleeps in satin sheets. And a 5'5" guy from Compton just made a song calling him a predator. And Drake responded by filing a lawsuit and ordering room service. So how did a Canadian child actor who builds nothing, writes nothing, and gets publicly humiliated every 2 years somehow end up as a billionaire? Look, when your ghostwriter's reference tracks leak, you have 3 options. 1. Say you were collaborating and pray nobody checks the receipts. 2. Start writing your own bars and hope they don't sound like a greeting card. Or 3. Do what Drake did. Realize the music was never the product. Aubrey Drake Graham grew up in Forest Hill, Toronto. Nice neighborhood, 2-parent household. His mom was a teacher. His dad was a drummer from Memphis who left when Drake was 5. So Drake grew up in a Jewish Canadian suburb, raised by a single mother on a street where nobody was selling anything harder than lemonade. At 15, a friend's father got him an audition for a Canadian teen soap opera called Degrassi, The Next Generation. He got the part. For 6 years, he played Jimmy Brooks, a kid in a wheelchair. His job was to memorize words typed into a script, deliver them with emotion, and make a television audience believe every single line. He wasn't training to be a rapper, he was training to be a performer, and nobody noticed the difference. So when the ghostwriting scandal hit in 2015, people acted like they'd caught Drake in a lie. But Drake had been memorizing other people's words since he was a teenager on a soundstage. The ghostwriting didn't expose him as a fraud. It just proved he was still doing the same job. The only thing that changed was the paycheck. And in 2009, he turned that performing ability into a business. This is the part nobody talks about. While every major label was suing teenagers for downloading music on LimeWire, Drake uploaded his entire mixtape, So Far Gone, to the internet for free, $0. 40,000 downloads in the first 2 hours. No label, no deal, no marketing budget, just a Canadian soap opera actor giving away music like samples at Costco. And here's the thing. Every single one of those 40,000 people became a node in a distribution network that Drake would spend the next 15 years monetizing. But a distribution network doesn't make you a billionaire. Not when the industry you're walking into is specifically designed to take your money, put you in debt, and leave you with nothing. To understand how Drake actually got rich, you have to understand how the music business keeps everyone else broke. And it's uglier than you think. Here's how the music industry actually works, because nobody explains this properly. When a label signs you, they hand you something called an advance. Sounds like free money. It is not free money. It is a loan. They use that loan to pay for your studio time, your music videos, your features, your marketing, your private jet to Coachella, and then they charge every single dollar back to your account. So you release an album. It does well. $50 million in revenue. Congratulations. But the label takes 80% off the top. That leaves you with $10 million. Then they subtract the advance they gave you, which was, say, $8 million. You just generated $50 million in revenue, and you took home $2 million before taxes. It is the only industry on earth where you can be the most famous person in the building, sell out every arena on the planet, and still technically owe your boss money. You're not an artist. You're an employee who thinks he's the CEO because they let him pick the color of his album cover. Drake walked into this system in 2009, and he spent the next 15 years finding every single exit door. The first thing he had to understand was how little streaming actually pays. Drake is the most streamed artist in Spotify history. 75 billion streams. Take Care, Views, Scorpion, Iceman, Habibti, Maid of Honor. He dropped those last 3 on the same night, by the way, like a fast food chain releasing 3 combo meals at midnight. Sounds like infinite money, right? Yeah, Spotify pays $0.003 per stream. So 75 billion streams times $0.003 equals roughly $225 million gross before the label takes their cut. Universal Music Group owns Drake's masters. They take 80%. Drake sees maybe $40 million from all streaming combined his entire career. $40 million. That's what the most listened to human being on planet Earth made from Spotify over 15 years. Streaming doesn't make you rich. It makes you famous. And fame is a different currency entirely. So if streaming is a dead end, the obvious move is to own the label. But to understand why Drake built OVO Sound, you have to understand what happened to the man who gave him his career. Lil Wayne discovered Drake, put him on Young Money, gave him features, credibility, and a platform. Wayne was Drake's mentor, his big brother, the reason any of this exists. And in return, Cash Money Records, run by a guy named Birdman, allegedly withheld tens of millions of dollars in royalties from Wayne. Wayne's album, The Carter 5, was held hostage for years. He couldn't release his own music. He went on Twitter, publicly, desperately, and wrote, "I want off this label." The greatest rapper of his generation, begging for his freedom on social media, while Birdman drove around Miami in a red Bugatti. Drake watched all of this happen in real time. He watched the man who gave him everything get financially strangled by the system, and he made a decision. He launched OVO Sound, signed Party Next Door, Majid Jordan, DVSN, Roy Woods. Now Drake sits on both sides of the table. He earns as an artist, and he takes a cut from every artist he signs. He didn't just escape the trap, he built his own version of it. But escaping the label wasn't enough, because even the deals that look good, the brand partnerships, the Nike checks, the sponsorship money, are designed to rob you in a different way. Most rappers get famous and sign a sneaker deal. The brand pays them a flat $5 million, prints their face on the box, and makes $200 million off their fans. Drake looked at that math and said no. He partnered with Nike to create NOCTA, his own sub-brand, not a sponsorship, a royalty deal. He earns a percentage on every single unit sold forever. This is the same play George Lucas ran when he kept the Star Wars merchandise rights. Hollywood laughed at him. Lucas made $5 billion. Drake took notes. And then there's 2016. Apple Music is trying to compete with Spotify. They need exclusive content. So they called Drake. And Drake did something that should be taught in business school. He held his album Views hostage, told Apple, "Pay me or I put it on Spotify and you get nothing." Apple paid him $19 million for a 2-week exclusive window. That's $1.3 million a day to not upload a folder of MP3 files. That's not a music deal, that's a ransom. By 2021, Drake was so big that Universal Music Group had to re-sign him to a deal worth a reported $400 million. Industry insiders called it a LeBron-sized partnership. It covered recordings, publishing, merch, and visual projects. But there was a catch. It required Drake to deliver a specific number of albums before he could get out. Every album Drake delivers under that contract is an album where UMG takes the lion's share. Drake wanted his freedom. He even rapped on his new song, Make Them Pay. "I'm better off independent. They should let him leave." So what do you do when you owe a multi-billion-dollar corporation albums and you want out? You run a contract speed run. You drop 3 albums on the same night. Iceman, Habibti, and Maid of Honor. 43 tracks total. Critics debated the quality control, but Drake didn't care. It was a massive content dump designed to clear his contract inventory. That shows you how hard it is to actually beat the system. Even if Drake delivers all his albums and leaves, Universal Music Group keeps his back catalog masters. The old songs, the ones that generate 75 billion streams, stay in the label's vault. He can walk away, but they keep the keys to his history. Drake is so angry about his lack of control that he actually sued Universal for defamation over Kendrick's Not Like Us, accusing his own label of boosting the diss track to hurt him. The case was dismissed, but he's currently appealing it. Drake's most lucrative move wasn't this legal battle, or even the $400 million contract. It was his ability to turn public humiliation into a cash register. Here's the part that doesn't make sense. Drake's most profitable business move wasn't a contract or a label. It was getting publicly humiliated over and over again. The internet declared his career over during the Meek Mill beef in 2015, and again with Pusha T in 2018. But Drake noticed a pattern. During every controversy, his overall catalog streams spiked massively. Millions tuned in for the drama, but stayed for the music. He realized something that changed his entire approach. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. The only thing that matters is that they cannot stop talking about you. Which brings us to 2024. Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us, the biggest diss track of the decade. But here's the part that should break your brain. The song mentions Drake so many times that the recommendation algorithms on Spotify and YouTube cannot stop suggesting Drake's music right after it. Kendrick accidentally turned his own diss track into a Drake commercial. And this is why Stake, an online gambling platform, paid Drake over $100 million because 80 million people listen to Drake every month. Stake isn't buying a musician, they're buying a billboard that never turns off. Drake started as an actor, then a business. Now, he's a machine that converts noise into money. And in the business of attention, the house always wins.